This is a lithium-ion battery cell. Cylindrical, silver-wrapped, about the size of a AA battery but heavier. Powers everything from smartphones to submarines. The chemistry inside, lithium moving between electrodes, is the heartbeat of 21st century technology. And 3 days ago, the Philippines revealed it's sitting on one of the largest lithium deposits on Earth. What they revealed next is what should terrify Washington. On January 21, 2026, at 8 a.m. Manila time, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. announced two things simultaneously. The discovery of an estimated 4.2 million metric tons of lithium reserves beneath the Philippine archipelago, roughly 15% of global proven reserves, and the signing of an exclusive 30-year development agreement with China worth $400 billion. Not the United States, not Japan, not Australia, China. The nation, the United States, has spent a decade building alliances to contain, just secured exclusive access to critical mineral deposits in America's oldest treaty ally in Asia. The Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement that grants U.S. forces access to Philippine bases now coexists with Chinese mining operations across the archipelago. The strategic contradiction is unresolvable. The Philippines just sold its geological future to the nation the Philippines is supposedly helping America deter. This is not a trade deal. This is the collapse of U.S. Pacific strategy, announced without warning, implemented before Washington could respond. Here's what they're not telling you. The lithium discovery wasn't actually a discovery. Philippine geologists have known about lithium concentrations in the Cordillera and Mindanao regions since 2019. The Philippine Mines and Geosciences Bureau completed comprehensive surveys in 2022. The data showed world-class deposits, concentrations rivaling Chile's Atacama and Argentina's Lithium Triangle. The information was classified. For 4 years, the Philippine government concealed the discovery while quietly negotiating with potential development partners. The United States was approached in early 2023. American companies showed interest but offered terms the Marcos administration found insulting. Minority ownership stakes, processing outside the Philippines, technology licensing rather than transfer, environmental conditions that would delay production for years. Japan was approached in mid-2023. Japanese companies offered better terms but couldn't match the capital deployment speed Chinese competitors promised. Australia was approached in late 2023. Australian companies, fresh from their own rare earth initiatives, were interested but distracted by domestic priorities. China was approached in early 2024. Chinese companies offered everything the Philippines wanted: majority Filipino ownership of mining operations, processing facilities built entirely within the Philippines, full technology transfer including proprietary extraction techniques, and $400 billion in committed capital over 30 years. The gap between American and Chinese offers wasn't close. It wasn't even comparable. China outbid America for the Philippines' geological future because China actually wanted to win. At 10:30 a.m. Manila time, on January 21st, I obtained a copy of the development agreement through a source in the Philippine Department of Energy. The document runs 1,247 pages. The key provisions explain why China's offer proved irresistible. Ownership structure. Filipino entities hold 60% of all mining and processing operations. Chinese partners hold 40%. The inversion of typical foreign investment structures ensures Philippine control and Philippine benefit. Processing requirement. 100% of extracted lithium must be processed into battery-grade materials within the Philippines. No raw ore exports permitted. The requirement ensures value-added processing occurs domestically. Technology transfer. Chinese partners must transfer all extraction and processing technology to Filipino joint venture partners within 10 years. By 2036, Filipino companies will possess independent capability to operate without Chinese participation. Employment guarantee. Minimum 85% Filipino employment across all operations. Chinese workers permitted only for specialized roles during technology transfer period. Infrastructure commitment. $127 billion in supporting infrastructure, roads, ports, power plants, worker housing, entirely funded by Chinese capital, with no Philippine government debt obligation. Revenue sharing. After cost recovery, profits split 65% to Filipino entities, 35% to Chinese partners. The split improves to 75%, 25% after year 15. Each provision maximizes Philippine benefit. The agreement reads like a Filipino wish list that China simply accepted. At 1 p.m. Eastern on January 21st, the State Department issued a terse statement expressing concern about the strategic implications of exclusive resource agreements with the People's Republic of China, and requesting Urgent consultations with our Philippine allies. The consultation request came too late. The agreement was signed, announced, and being implemented before Washington knew it was being negotiated. At 3 p.m. Eastern, I spoke with a former State Department official who served as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Southeast Asian Affairs. The official's assessment was blunt. We lost the Philippines today, not militarily, not yet, but strategically. The EDCA bases mean nothing if the Philippine economy depends on Chinese investment. Marcos will maintain the alliance on paper while tilting toward Beijing in practice. We offered lectures about values. China offered $400 billion. We lost. I asked about recovery options. There are no recovery options. The agreement is signed. The deposits are committed. We could try to match China's offer, but we're 30 months late and American companies aren't willing to offer the terms China offered. The Philippine decision is final. We need to plan for a Pacific strategy that doesn't assume Philippine alignment. This is where the lie becomes unsustainable. The United States has operated in the Pacific on the assumption that alliance relationships would survive economic competition. The assumption held when American economic engagement in the region exceeded Chinese engagement. That assumption inverted around 2015. Chinese trade with ASEAN nations surpassed American trade. Chinese investment in Southeast Asia exceeded American investment. Chinese infrastructure projects, ports, railways, power plants, transformed physical connectivity, while American engagement remained primarily military. The Philippines exemplifies the inversion. U.S.-Philippine trade totals approximately $24 billion annually. China-Philippine trade totals $82 billion. Before the Lithium agreement, China was already the Philippines' largest trading partner by a factor of 3. The military alliance with the United States provides security guarantees, but security guarantees don't build infrastructure, don't create jobs, don't develop industries. Filipinos can't eat mutual defense treaties. Marcos calculated, correctly, that economic development matters more to Filipino voters than strategic alignment. The Lithium agreement delivers development. The American alliance delivers only promises of protection against threats that seem abstract compared to everyday poverty. At 4:30 p.m. Beijing time on January 21st, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian addressed the agreement in terms that emphasized Philippine agency. The Lithium Development Partnership reflects the Philippine government's sovereign decision to develop national resources for national benefit. China respects Philippine sovereignty and is honored to participate in Philippine development. We hope other nations will similarly respect Philippine sovereign choices. The statement's framing was precise. China isn't acquiring Philippine resources. China is helping the Philippines develop Philippine resources. The framing insulates the agreement from neo-colonial criticism while highlighting the contrast with American approaches that prioritize American interests. The contrast with American offers is damning. American companies sought majority ownership, offshore processing, and technology licensing that would preserve American advantages. China offered minority ownership, domestic processing, and technology transfer that would build Filipino capabilities. The difference reflects different strategic calculations. American companies optimize for shareholder returns. Chinese companies, operating under state direction, optimize for strategic positioning. Strategic positioning accepts lower returns in exchange for relationship deepening. The Philippines chose the partner who offered what the Philippines actually wanted. The choice was rational. The consequences for American strategy are severe. Less than 90 days separate today from the beginning of Chinese development operations in the Philippines. The timeline is aggressive but achievable given pre-positioned Chinese capabilities. Phase 1, days 0 through 90. Site preparation at Cordillera Central and Mindanao deposits. Chinese engineering teams, already in country under preliminary survey authorizations, begin infrastructure construction. Environmental baseline assessments, pre-completed during the secret negotiation period, filed for regulatory approval. Phase 2, days 90 through 365. Initial extraction operations at highest concentration sites. Processing facility construction at Subic Bay Special Economic Zone, a former U.S. naval base now hosting Chinese industrial investment. First battery-grade lithium hydroxide production by month 18. Phase 3, years 2 to 5. Full-scale production reaching 200,000 metric tons of lithium carbonate equivalent annually. Processing capacity for battery cathode materials. Integration with Chinese battery supply chains. Phase 4, years 5 to 10. Production scaling to 400,000 metric tons annually. Technology transfer completion. Filipino-operated facilities achieving independent operation. The timeline transforms the Philippines from resource importer to major exporter within a decade. The transformation occurs under Chinese partnership, with Chinese technology integrated into Chinese supply chains. When strategic minerals flow through adversary partnerships, military alliances strain under economic weight. The U.S.-Philippine relationship now contains contradictions that may prove unresolvable. The Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA, grants U.S. forces access to 9 Philippine bases, including facilities near the South China Sea, where U.S. forces would operate in any Taiwan contingency. Chinese engineers will soon operate lithium extraction facilities across the Philippine archipelago. The proximity creates operational security nightmares. Chinese nationals with legitimate business presence across the Philippines have access that military positioning cannot prevent. Intelligence collection opportunities expand dramatically. The distinction between civilian mining operations and dual-use capabilities blurs. At 7 p.m. Manila time on January 21st, Philippine Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro addressed the strategic contradiction in a press conference, notable for its defensive tone. The lithium agreement is commercial. Our security relationship with the United States is strategic. The two exist in separate domains. Philippine national interests require both economic development and security partnership. We do not accept that these interests conflict. The assertion that economic and strategic interests exist in separate domains contradicts basic strategic analysis. Economic integration creates dependencies. Dependencies constrain policy options. Policy constraints affect security relationships. The domains are inseparable. At 9 p.m. Tokyo time on January 21st, Japanese Prime Minister Ishida held an emergency National Security Council meeting. Japan's Pacific strategy assumes Philippine alignment against Chinese expansion. The lithium agreement suggests that assumption is incorrect. Japanese analysts are reassessing. If the Philippines tilts toward China economically while maintaining nominal U.S. alliance, Japanese security calculations change fundamentally. Taiwan contingency planning that assumed Philippine cooperation may require revision. At 11 p.m. Washington time on January 21st, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee announced emergency hearings on the strategic implications of Chinese resource agreements with U.S. allies. The hearings will occur after the agreement is already being implemented, testimony that cannot change facts on the ground. What the informed understand is that the Philippine Lithium Agreement represents a template for Chinese engagement that American strategy has no effective counter to. The template has several elements. Respect sovereignty rhetorically. China frames agreements as partnerships that serve host nation interests. The framing contrasts with American approaches often perceived as extractive or condescending. Offer superior commercial terms. Chinese state-backed companies can accept lower returns, longer timelines, and more host nation favorable terms than American companies seeking market returns. The commercial advantage is structural, not circumstantial. Deliver visible infrastructure. Chinese projects build tangible things, roads, ports, power plants, that host nation populations can see and use. American engagement often emphasizes intangibles, security guarantees, rule of law, democratic values, that don't address immediate material needs. Accept political ambiguity. China doesn't demand exclusive alignment. The Philippines can maintain U.S. alliance while deepening Chinese economic ties. The ambiguity allows host nations to avoid difficult choices until the economic weight makes the choice for them. The template has worked across Southeast Asia. Cambodia tilted toward China through infrastructure investment. Laos became economically dependent through railway and dam projects. Myanmar's military relies on Chinese support. Thailand balances between powers while Chinese economic presence grows. The Philippines was supposed to be different, the oldest U.S. ally in Asia, a democracy with historical and cultural ties to America, the nation that evicted a dictator through people power and has maintained democratic governance since. The Philippines wasn't different. When China offered $400 billion and America offered lectures, the Philippines chose money. The choice was pragmatic, not ideological. That's what makes it irreversible. At 1 a.m. Manila time on January 22nd, President Marcos addressed the nation, explaining the agreement's rationale. The Philippines has been rich in natural resources but poor in development. Our copper, our gold, our nickel, all extracted by foreign companies who took the wealth and left us the holes. This agreement is different. This agreement keeps wealth in Filipino hands. Our lithium will build Filipino industries, employ Filipino workers, develop Filipino technology. The partner who made this possible is China. We thank them for respecting Philippine sovereignty and Philippine interests. The speech's framing positioned China as the partner who respected Philippine interests, while implying that previous partners, America primarily, had not. The implication will shape Philippine public opinion for years. The lithium-ion battery cell weighs about 45 grams. The chemistry inside, lithium ions flowing through electrolyte between graphite anode and cathode material, enables energy storage that powers modern civilization. The lithium in this cell might have come from Chile, from Australia, from China. Soon it might come from the Philippines, extracted by Filipino workers, processed in Filipino facilities, shipped through Filipino ports. The Philippines becoming a major lithium producer should benefit everyone. More supply means lower prices. Lower prices mean faster electrification. Faster electrification means cleaner energy. The logic suggests celebration, not concern. But the lithium will flow through Chinese partnerships, into Chinese supply chains, serving Chinese strategic objectives. The integration deepens dependencies that constrain Philippine policy options. The constraints accumulate until the U.S.-Philippine alliance exists in name only. $400 billion, 30 years, exclusive access. The numbers describe a strategic realignment disguised as a commercial agreement. The realignment serves Philippine economic interests, genuinely serves them, with terms that maximize Filipino benefit. The service doesn't change the strategic consequences. The United States lost the Philippines not through Chinese coercion, but through Chinese competence. China offered what the Philippines wanted. America didn't. The fault lies in Washington, not Manila or Beijing. 4.2 million metric tons of lithium, 15% of global reserves, exclusive Chinese development rights. The numbers describe American strategic failure in its most important alliance theater. The failure is complete before most Americans know it occurred. The battery cell weighs 45 grams. The strategic weight of what just happened can't be measured on any scale. The Philippines chose China. They chose because China offered more. America offered less. The math was simple. The consequences are not. 90 days until Chinese operations begin. The countdown started 3 days ago. An American Pacific strategy, built on alliance relationships that assumed economic competition wouldn't matter, just discovered that economic competition was the only thing that ever mattered. The battery cell powers devices. The lithium agreement powers realignment. And the United States, which spent decades assuming allies would remain allies regardless of economic engagement, just learned what happens when assumptions meet reality. Reality won. China won. The Philippines decided. And the Pacific just shifted beneath American feet.